All right, so here's a little tutorial on how to put the camera up and down. Um, got it all packaged up like you would pull it out of your car and put it together. I've got this bungee cord that I just loop around the handle. Makes it easy to carry the box in where you're going. You can throw a chair on there if it works good. This right here is a little hook that allows the mast to sit up and down. The mast comes completely out. When I'm in the back of my Suburban, I usually undo it about halfway, take it apart so it'll fit sideways in my rig. Otherwise it just sits in these two little loops and it sits right on the ground. There's a little swivel disc that I have for the bottom of the mast. After I do that, pop open the tripods. And then one of the things I do right off the bat after I put the tripods out, there's a couple of bubbles right up here at the very top on each side. I take a look at that to see if it's level, but then nothing beats the eyeball test. You know, you stand to the side and make sure this is pretty vertical, and then you stand behind it. And actually I'm leaning this way a little bit, so I'm just going to extend this side a little bit. It'll sit pretty well. It'll sit pretty well on uneven ground. I always obviously try and pick a nice flat spot to set up on when I do it. But once I do that, open up the case. Here's the little swivel that I have, a little Lazy Susan swivel. I just put this right underneath the mast itself. Makes it so it turns really nice when we're using it. And then it's time to put all the other components on there. You've got camera and the tilt mechanism. The way these work, just got a classic top of a tripod interlocking system right here. That goes on there, snaps in place. The idea behind this is as this sits on top of the tripod, it's spring loaded, so it's always wanting to be pulled down. So when I connect this backside to the handle, as you let up it pans down, as you pull down it pans up, and it's really nice when you can get that vertically straight down shot, because then you can be really tight up next to a soccer sideline and get everything you need. I do tend to set up 15-20 feet off the sideline if I can, because it zooms in so great. I don't have to be right there on the side, but anyway, that's what we do. And then these are just little flip-lock systems. Move this up so you can see. These are just little flip-lock systems. Drop it right in there, flip it down. That's it, sits right in the top. Essentially, we're going to connect these two pieces right here with a piece of paracord. We'll hook up our tethers and off we'll go. Camera is on a little gooseneck here swivel. This just bites right here onto the handle itself. I'm going to bring you around. I tend to, when I'm just working out of home, a lot of times I'll just spin this around and I'll just lock it in this position and walk off the field instead of putting it in my case, just because I'm lazy. But there's one connection for the camera, little cable right here. Just line up the lines, those fit in. That gives you power and video once that's plugged in. And then we have our tether. Tether's my 25-foot piece of cord here. What I did is I put a red piece of Velcro at the top of this, and I just made a knot. That's what I have on my other system. What I do is I Velcro this right up here to the top of the world. That way these cords aren't hanging on the camera itself. Zoom this in so maybe you can see. There's just 3 connections that need to be made. 2 of them are on this side of the camera, There's a little flip block here, and it's our power. And this is the multicam AV port that they call it. That fits on this side. One of the challenges I found making this is that this is like a 2014 camera or 13 camera. The new cameras have that port, but they don't talk to the remote. So that was, you can find other cameras that might not talk to it. And then the HDMI cable plugs on this other side. And then of course, don't forget to open your shutter. I've done that before, send it all the way up, and I have a black screen because my shutter's closed. So those are my 3 cables. The cord that's going to connect things is just this piece of paracord. It just has a little carabiner on the top. And you connect it right there, and essentially, pan this down, to my handle right here. When I get to the desired height, I'm just going to wrap this around there, and I have a little cleat that I lock it off on, so that as I go up and down, the camera goes up and down like this, so I can pan, turn, go up and down, and then my zoom is right here on this little remote deal. One of the things I found in running this is that this paracord, in really windy days, actually has enough friction to make the tower move, and it's not terrible, but it's a little annoying. So I have a second. I'll send you some of this stuff. It's just a waxy. It's actually stuff that came off one of my saddle stitchers, but it's waxy line, and it's thinner, and it works great on windy days. I have maybe twice in the last year that I did it, lowered the top section and only put it up about 20 feet, 22 feet, to lessen the wind profile on some of those just really windy days. But you know, really with the battery down there at the bottom and these 4 legs, the previous version I had those old ankle weights that weighted down all of my legs. But with this system, I have them, but I haven't used them at all, even on the windy days. So I don't know, works pretty good. So now that this tether is here, and I have my paracord on there, all we have to do is send it up to the top. But I think before we'll do that, we'll go ahead and plug it in. So I'll get my 2 cords separate so I don't snag them. On the other end of the cord, just got 2 items to plug in. One is power cord, and then the other one is our HDMI cable. On this camera that I'm sending you, the HDMI plug-in is right down in here inside this box. This box just provides some weatherproofing to keep the electronics dry. So I've got a hole down here on the side. I have a converter right here that converts the HDMI signal into RCA jacks. You can plug it in right there. And then the power itself goes right here, plugs into there. Before I plug that in, I need to plug my battery in. And I have found with this battery box, again, this is just a deep cycle battery. I've actually been packing mine around without the battery box. It's a piece of weatherproofing, but you know, works good. There's just 2 clips, go black to negative, red to positive. Once that's hooked up, push it back in. Got a bungee cord that holds the box on there so it doesn't jump off. You can decide to put the box lid on there or not. It's your choice. And then we'll plug in our system to the inverter. You have another empty plug-in right here if you have to plug anything else in. You want to charge your cell phone or whatever. The USB port actually powers the little converter. I've messed around with some other TVs, and some of the TVs just have a direct HDMI port. They seem to all work the same, but pretty much need power, need to plug in the TV. And once that's connected, come back over here. Once we have power, see we have a, I don't know if you can see it, but the screen is blue. As soon as I connect, I always like to see that I have things working before I send it all the way up. At the other end, the last thing you'll see is right here on the cable, This is where my small remote jack plugs into. Right where it joins, I like to just Velcro it right here to the system. Gives me a good anchor point. I don't have to worry about the cords getting yanked on themselves. And then this little plug-in right here just plugs in right to this remote. I'll probably take this remote off and put it in the box, but it's pretty easy. It's just a little pinch and stick type of a deal. It has an on and an off button, so I'll turn it on. We've got power. Oops, I need to go inside of that. And that's nice because at halftime I always turn it off. I turn it back on a little bit before we go. All right, had to pause there for a second. My iPad memory was full. So we plugged in the 3 things up on the top. I plugged in my remote, and I plugged in the 2 more things on the bottom. The beauty is that's as simple as it gets. For some reason there's no video or there's no power, you just make sure you're plugged in at the top, make sure you're plugged in at the bottom, or just make sure this AC adapter, this little guy hasn't, whoops, I just turned it off, hasn't hopped out of there, but that never happens. As long as I have a screen right here on my TV, I know I'm ready to send it up, which I do. And when I send it up, these are just little flip locks. Now, one of the things I've noticed, having done this, is sometimes if I don't hang on to this, it'll go all the way up there and I can't get it to, it'll be stuck in that position. I can't get it to come down. This one actually tends to come down once it gets all the way up, but you might find that as you're sending it up, it might make sense to you, hold on to, remote's plugged in the way. Might make sense to hold on to them together so that it stays in the position. What I did too is I put like a little warning track here. So you'll see 2 little dash lines and then a solid circle line that goes all the way around. This circle line tells you that you have 6 inches left. You could accidentally pull it all the way out. You can be really anywhere in that line system. It doesn't have to be right on the end. Just that's kind of your warning. Don't keep pulling too far. And then we just keep sending it up. And really, as long as you see the red, you're fine. I'm not getting tangled here. My last one. Just made that a little too tight. There we go. So once I get to the top, I want to make sure that I did it to myself. Looking right into the sun. There we go. So we're vertical. And then what I do is I just try and line things up. These just twist really nice. Still looking into the sun. There we go. I just make sure it's relatively straight. And then I look at my field and I wind that on there and just hook my little cleat in its spot, and that's all it is. Makes it so it's nice and adjustable. Make sure my remote is plugged in. Tether this off right here onto the camera itself, and then I'll wheel you a little closer. As you end up looking at your screen, and we make sure everything's where it wants to be. This is just a nice thumb remote. This guy here has the zoom switch right here, so you'll spend most of the time just thumb on the zoom in and out. The photo button works. It'll take pictures if you want to take photos of kids with that. And then the red circle button is how we press remote. This little guy increases the speed in which it zooms in or out. And then I haven't really messed with the other on-screen stuff. It has an on-off button, so if I flip this to off, the camera will shut off. And if I want to save battery or whatever. But what I always do is right before the game starts, and at halftime, I always turn it off, and I'll hear it turn off, and then I'll turn it back on, and I'll wait till I see my picture here on the TV, know I'm running. There it goes. I make sure that I deliberately press the record button. The only thing, and I found this with the other systems, the one that Idaho Youth Soccer bought, the big $6,000 system, is the extended screen from the video cameras doesn't show down here on the screen. So you just have to deliberately press record. And I haven't had any trouble doing that. As long as I turn it on and off, I know that it's off. I deliberately press record. When the game's over, I press record again to stop it. And then I turn it off using this switch. It works really good. I wish you could see the stuff on this screen, and I can hear it up there. When you press the button, you can hear it, make its little handy cam sound. But sometimes if there's wind or if there's parents or people talking, you don't always hear it. So that works really good, and you're often recording. I always make sure I can turn both directions, that I can see the two corners of the field, and then I just practice zooming in on the goals, zooming out, making sure everything works. And then I just have my little system where I kind of film the game in thirds. If it's offensively going this way, I have the player a third into the screen this direction. If the possession is flipped, then I'll have possession a third of the way into the screen going this way. Same up and down, trying to keep them in the middle. And I'll pan out enough so I can see, see if an outside back is making a run, or maybe I'm zoomed in on my daughter or something, trying to get some highlight films. You'll see that on my film. Sometimes when she gets the ball, I'll zoom in a little closer, looking for highlights. But that's basically it. It's up and running. Haven't really needed a blackout screen for this. Sometimes I'll just wear a visor. It helps me see it a little better. I like to stand when I film. It'd be pretty easy to take this piece right here and drop it down below onto the piece down here, so you could sit down and film. You could clamp this TV on pretty much anywhere, so you could sit and film. The only negative to that is that if you did take this clamp off, and I just put them on with wing nuts, if you did take this clamp and put it down there, you wouldn't be able to slide the mast out of its collar right here, because you'd have that below it. That might be an issue for you. Like, I put mine in my Suburban sideways, and I want it to be as small as possible. If you're throwing it in the back of a Subaru, or you're throwing it in the back of a truck or something like that, you could certainly leave the mast on there, and it'd be easy to pack. The mast is about 6 feet tall. When the mast comes out, this is only 48 inches, so that I've had it in a nice little hatchback before, putting it in that way. But essentially that's it. You're up and you're running and you're filming. When it comes to teardown, it's just the opposite. I always make sure I turn this off so that my camera's off on the way down, and then it's just reverse. We take off our control there, we unplug our wires, and then these are just little flip locks. Comes on down. You could even do that at a halftime if it was really windy. You didn't want to leave it all the way up at halftime. I have gone ahead with all of these. I put heat shrink around all of the connections to make sure they're as waterproof as they possibly can be. There is these little rain covers that are designed for the cameras. They're nice because you can zip tie around the front of the camera, and then it has a nice little open space for the bottom. They last okay. You get a couple uses out of them, but they're only a couple of bucks on Amazon, so I just keep buying more and more of those. But I haven't filmed in the rain a ton, probably more wind than anything. But and then it's just reverse order. You take it apart and you put it back in the spots that it was, collapse it down, and you're off and running. So last thing here, you'll notice too, now that I have it disassembled, I've got the tripod legs back in. I always clip the battery cables down here onto the axle, so that they're out of the way, because you can't lay the batteries down sideways in a car unless you buy those Optima batteries. So I always take my battery out off the bungee on the bottom, and I just leave those cables clipped right there. I've got this charger that I'll send you. This is a 1.5 amp charger, and gives you a couple ways to do it. I think the best one will be these alligator clips, where you just make the plug in here, plug this into the wall, clip this onto your battery. This is just a simple red light, green light system. You get a green light or you get a red light. Let you know if it's charged or needs charged. It's nice because it won't overcharge. It compensates for things like extension cords. You could plug this onto a motorcycle and leave it in your shed all winter, and it would make sure your battery's all topped off and fresh when you got it. It's for 12-volt batteries only, which this system is. And it's 1.5 amps, so it's kind of an, if that battery was totally socked or something, it might take overnight to charge it at 1.5. But you know, I think this system draws about 5 amps, and a standard deep cycle battery is 75 amp hours or so. If you buy just the standard size, which that gives you 12-15 hours worth of filming before you'd have to recharge it. But I like to come home and put it in the charger. That way I know I'm topped off. This actually could be mounted if you wanted to. You could mount this somewhere onto the camera if you wanted, and just be able to clip it on and off. Totally your choice. Mine's separate because I do a little different system with the kids at school and the couple cameras. But we'll send you with that. And then the other part is once you're done filming, just have to loosen this little nut here on the bottom and turn this to the side, and we have take it off. Just at the bottom of the camera, you've got the card. I'm going to send a card reader also with you, so that you can plug it into here and then plug this USB into a camera. Or if your computer just takes a card, this actually is a micro card inside an adapter, but it works great. That's what I use on mine, because you can get a lot of games on 64 gigabytes. But it'll split a 90-minute game into 4 sections. Makes it easy to get in there and make your adjustments. Makes it easy to upload it to YouTube, that kind of stuff. You might mess around with the different sizes that you can use. I tend to do all of mine in the highest HD format. It makes the games about 6 gigabytes, 7 gigabytes sometimes. So I have a bunch of 8 gigabyte USB sticks that I drag that stuff onto. There we go, and then we're back together. But you could certainly record it in standard def. It would make uploading a lot faster. And then you just have to decide if that resolution is what you want, or if you want to do it in HD. But yeah, storing the cables there. You have your recharge system, and then getting your film off the camera this way. You could use the long tether to charge this. I just leave the battery in it because it charges it every time I use it. You could download pictures, I guess, using that, using it there. It just seems like that's the easiest way to take it off. I bought myself a wireless modem, and I can stick this card into it and transfer it onto a USB stick out on the field. I found that it's not super fast. It still takes me about 20 minutes to transfer a game, but if I'm out and I'm filming for someone, or they want a copy before I leave a tournament, I'll use that device. It's called Kingston Mobile Light, and I think I spent 30 bucks on it, 40 bucks on it, and that way I can transfer things wirelessly. But computer, of course, works just as good. Depends on if that works for you, or if it's what you're looking to do. There were 2 more things I thought about since the last one. So the only other thing that you might have to do, there is a reset button on the inverter. So around on this little plastic white box, it's just right in the front, it says reset. For whatever reason, power isn't working, you just hit the reset button. You might notice the fan runs on that, or it makes a little whirring noise, and that's normal. It does that to me. I notice when my battery's fully topped off, it tends to make less noise. But anyway, that's the charger. And then the last thing is, I have this collar on the top and the bottom that the mast sits in. I have it connected with these hose clamps. And on occasion, if I'm set up on a really unstable place, or I'm really leaning left or right, this is just a flathead screwdriver, or I guess you could even throw a little wrench on there if you wanted. But If you loosen that, you can just physically slide this whole thing left or right. So if you were setting up and you backed up and you're like, gosh, that just isn't straight, and you didn't want to level it with using the tripod legs, you could use both of those and loosen one or the other. Maybe it's the bottom. I found sometimes just by moving it an inch or so makes, you know, a foot of difference on the top. Because obviously the straighter the mast is, the smoother it articulates, and the easier it is to follow the action without any bumps and stuff. And you'll figure that out as you film. But so here's the last piece. I have it in the back of my Suburban. This is actually one of the things that drove me to make this system the way it is, because using those big, really expensive ones, I was stuck in the bus because it wouldn't fit anywhere. You see I had the battery there on the left, and then the case there right in the middle. Just need that 48-inch space, and then I actually have to break my mast in half so it'll sit sideways inside the Suburban, but pretty convenient. You can actually get this down in a pretty small trunk or anything like that, rental car, pretty successfully.